Hello everyone, this is Dalster and welcome to another episode review of Dark Side of the Ring, Episode 2. Today's episode focuses on the life and career of Magnum TA, who was very ahead of his time before that terrible car crash, but he's still alive in case you are wondering. I don't know much about Magnum TA other than him being a wrestler, so in this episode I'll learn more about him. Magnum TA's real name is Terry Wayne Allen, who was born in Virginia. He was influenced by wrestling when he was a kid, watching it on TV. Terry thought wrestlers were like superheroes to him. He started taking wrestling seriously and wrestled in ninth grade and won the state wrestling tournament in school. Once he graduated high school, he worked at a bar in Virginia Beach. At the bar, he met a wrestler named Buzz Swayer, who told Terry that he can help him become a wrestler. Terry was told that he needed a wrestling license by Buzz, as it was supposedly $10,000. Buzz even went to Terry's house and explained to Terry's family about starting a career in wrestling. Terry's mother believed in Terry's wrestling dream and asked her father for the money, but sadly, Terry and his family got scammed. Jim Cornette said that a wrestling license costs about $10 to $25. Terry never got the money back, but he did confront Buzz about it and they trained. Dusty Rhodes saw a lot of potential and charisma within Terry, so he helped Terry become a part of the wrestling community. Terry got the name Magnum TA from wrestling legend Andre the Giant because Andre thought that Terry looked like the actor Tom Selleck from the show Magnum PI. He then put the TA, probably from his initials of his first and last name, and was called Magnum TA. He gets put in Crockett's wrestling promotion, owned by Jim Crockett back then. In the 80s, at this promotion, they had Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, the Rock and Roll Express, and the Road Warriors. It was a wrestling promotion opposite of WWE, with more blood, grit, and glam. Magnum TA wrestled at the Mid-South and went through a variety of gimmicks, with one being suits and ties, another being a punk rock style, and then a cowboy hat, but none of them fit the style that Magnum TA wanted. Terry asked for Dusty's help, and Dusty thought of Magnum TA's look by having a leather jacket and a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. When Terry came to present his new style, the crowd and everyone else were shocked to see Terry with how impressive his new look was. The ladies would even throw their underwear and bras when Terry came into the ring. Magnum TA in the 80s was really blonde and young, yet his looks reminded me a little of Chuck Norris, Burt Reynolds, and James Brolin's looks back in the 70s and 80s from the movies. Magnum TA got married to a woman named Tamara, but their marriage would go through some difficult obstacles as Magnum TA was a rock star to the ladies and started hanging out at the parties. One day, Tamara saw pictures from Terry's clothes with a different woman on them. This was only the beginning of their rough marriage. Meanwhile, at the Jim Crockett's promotion, Magnum TA started wrestling with a Russian wrestler named Nikita, known as the Russian Nightmare. Their rivalry would become one of the biggest feuds of wrestling in the 1980s. Magnum TA and Nikita had several matches, just like the NBA playoffs, but Nikita won the feud after winning the 7th match, which fans were not happy about. Eventually, Magnum TA fought for the World Heavyweight Championship belt against Jimmy Garvin in South Carolina on October 14, 1986. At this time, Magnum TA bought a new Porsche with the money he was making and started speeding his new car more often. It was this vehicle that unfortunately led to the horrible car crash. After Terry won the match against Garvin, he left the arena driving his car in a rainy storm. Word of advice: never drive fast during a rainy day. Water was gathering in a corner on the street. Terry's Porsche got caught in one of the areas, causing it to hydroplate. The tires most likely got slippery as it lost control, and the Porsche cut a telephone pole in half. When Terry tried to move after the crash, he could barely move his body except one of his shoulders. Tamara saw Terry's Porsche and described the car as entirely destroyed, with the Porsche's roof completely off. Terry got emergency surgery and his neck got paralyzed after the accident, as well as his lungs. He was put into a ventilator with morphine in the IV line so that it can help him breathe. The doctors told the Crockett family that Terry would never get in the ring and wrestle ever again. About 8 to 10,000 phone calls were sent to Terry's hospital, but the hospital had to shut down the phone lines due to so many calls. It was an all-out media event as people sent flowers, gifts, and prayers for Terry while at the hospital. Some of the wrestlers could not see Terry like a regular visitor because they did not want to break kayfabe, or in easier terms, breaking character that's presented on the media, most notably the television. They would have to sneak into the hospital. Ric Flair, who was a heel back in the day and not my favorite person in the world, gave a golden belt to Terry. I'll admit, that's one of the nicest things I've heard of Ric Flair in Dark Side of the Ring this season. Other wrestlers donated some of their money from their checks to Terry because he did not have much money left to take care of his paralysis. Nikita found out about Terry being in the hospital fighting for his life through Dusty and the Crockett's. He was given Terry's spot as the new face, even though fans hated his character at the time. As for Terry, he told his story to Bill Apter, a wrestling journalist, in order to thank his fans and put in a good word for Nikita to be the hero in the Crockett's wrestling promotion. In April 1987, Magnum TA returned to the Baltimore Arena walking after being considered paralyzed for life. Everyone, even the wrestlers, were emotionally happy to see Magnum TA walking. But he still had trouble walking at times, as seen in this episode. Terry became a color commentator shortly after, but struggled while watching matches in the sidelines, which is understandable. Sadly, Terry and Tamara eventually divorced after the many infidelities Terry had behind Tamara's back. The Crockett Wrestling promotions ended after they made a deal with Ted Turner, who was the owner of WCW back then. Some of the interviewers said that the Crockett Wrestling promotion would have survived longer had Terry never been in that car crash and continued to wrestle. While being interviewed for this episode, Terry said that he thought about having the wrestling gold and would continue to wrestle if it weren't for the car crash. Since then, Terry got married to another woman named Courtney, who was married to Tully Blanchard from the Four Horsemen group. Terry left the wrestling field and continues to move forward with his life, doing other ventures. He has come to terms with his paralysis. Interviewers for this episode of Dark Side of the Ring are Magnum TA, aka Terry Allen, Jim Cornette, Jim Crockett's son David, Jake the Snake Roberts, Bill Apter, David Crockett, who was an executive for the Crockett's wrestling promotion, Tamara Howell, Terry's ex-wife, Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare, and Jimmy Garvin, who was the guy that lost the belt to Terry. I thought the episode was okay as I got to learn more about who was Magnum TA. I've heard the name sometimes in the wrestling community, but never knew how big of a star he was. He definitely had the looks during the 80s and looked really promising, but it is sad what had happened to him. I think he could have been in the WWE Hall of Fame or wrestled with WWE or WWF in the 90s, but one thing changed all of that. He got lucky though, as a lot of big stars who gained so much popularity always die young. Brian Pillman died of a car crash as he was becoming a huge star, but at least Magnum TA was able to live and tell his story. I don't know if he ever wanted kids, but he doesn't seem to have any. I wonder how he gets money other than appearances, because I've heard a lot of things that wrestlers struggle with finances, which is why they keep wrestling even though they are supposed to retire at 50, 60, or 70, because the human body is fragile as you get older, I would assume. He got to be a shining star that went too fast too soon. I wish him the best of luck and that he lives the rest of his life happily. I give this episode a 10 out of 10 for learning more about Magnum TA and having him speak in this episode. Sorry if this review came out really late, as I have been pretty tired lately. I'll see you guys in the next video. Comment, like, or subscribe, whatever you guys want. And I'll see you next time with another episode review. Thank you guys, and I'll see you later. Bye guys.